Hey, MBA hopefuls. We're on the air with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education, streaming live every Tuesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And we bring you tons of tips to help you get into the top ranked MBA program and get you up close and personal with many of these business schools that we host on the show, where you can get your questions answered. And if you like this week's episode, don't forget to like and to subscribe. Today on episode 106, we're talking to Marlena Corcoran, founder of Athena Mentor International University Admissions Consulting. Marlena has been advising college and business school applicants for almost 20 years. And then as of July, people who are interested in international business education can follow her on Forbes.com. Marlena is an old friend and a colleague of all of ours. And so we're so excited to have her here. So a super warm welcome to our co-hosts and to Marlena. How is everyone doing?
Great. Hi, Bara.
Really well, and looking forward to helping some young people get started on their early career business education.
Krithika, how are you doing? You're muted.
Same here. Super excited to be here.
Great. Well, it's so great to see everyone. Feels like we just saw each other all in New York, and now we're in our respective corners of the world. So showing up on MBA Waves is really heartwarming. Some college graduates are clearly more interested in business education, but at MBA Waves, we know that that MBAs might be more suited for someone with higher work experience. So can we talk first about what some specialized master's degrees that college graduates can consider to enhance their career prospects in business?
So many people are interested today in a business career, and they hear about it already when they're teenagers. So they feel ready to roll, and they don't want to wait for the traditional path of putting in 2 to 5 years of work experience and then 2 years in a classical gold standard MBA program. They want to get going, and that's what the specialized master's degrees are all about. And I'd say there are three kinds. Historically, the quant heavy degrees, finance, accounting, analytics. So those are sort of classical master's degrees in business. And then lately, there have been more generalized masters in management that give college graduates the skills that they need for that first job. And then there are very specialized degrees in qualitative management and data analytics. So those are all degrees that don't require the same scope and overview of an MBA education. They're highly focused, and they really help people get that first job.
Adding on to that, I think some of the young college graduates think that they may like a particular field when they start in it, but then they realize that that's not for them. So, for example, especially in India, where they do a lot of engineering degrees, they go into something as specialized as chemical engineering, civil engineering, and so on, and they realize that that's not for them. And they want to make the pivot to business education as soon as possible. So I agree that um, the Masters in Management program, which has been in Europe for longer than in the US, is something that's so popular. It just gets them those entry into the field of management, which they would not otherwise get.
That's super interesting. So when do students start? When do you start working with students on some of these programs as compared to the MBA students?
Well, they really need to start while they're still in college, because some of the types of degrees that we'll be discussing today require that the person still be in college. They have to apply when they're seniors. And even if there is no such requirement, in order to set yourself up for a business career, you want to be taking math courses or data science courses, engineering courses, while you are still in college. So it's not something where people should wait until spring of their senior year and suddenly it dawns on them, I have no idea what I'm doing next year. I don't have a job. I don't really feel ready to leave school. And so maybe that makes me a good candidate. No, I think you need to plan in advance. And furthermore, this will be right up your alley, Bara. You should take the GMAT or the GRE. Start with the GMAT and find out which test you want to study for, because many of the master's programs, because they have traditionally been so quant heavy, are definitely looking for a test score. So those are all things that people can do while they're still in college.
I think
Yeah,
the
this
brain
is
is.
exactly why I'm really excited about being able to get this information to people who are younger, who are still during their undergraduate program, right? People who are still at university. I think something like 90% of university students are not taking advantage of career services, are not getting the information they need. If they are, like you said, last minute, considering going to grad school, they don't know what they're doing their spring semester of their senior year of college, and they've missed the boat. So it's super important that you get this information in advance. And I think talking to somebody like Marlena, who really specializes in these kinds of programs, is really good. And following her, your newsletter.
Well, thank you, Eric. I do try to address younger students in my newsletters for this reason. Even schools that have excellent career services, they may not be quite on top of the day-to-day developments in this area of specialized masters in business. Just last week, there were 2 new programs in data science, one at Boston University, one in Virginia. So it's a rapidly developing field, and people need to get up to speed, do their research, talk to someone who knows.
And I want to add here, I would say that it's also sometimes not the fault of students because they have to deal with so many things. Example, like finding a job, and then or exploring the option of going to grad school, or figuring out like if they want a gap year to do something else or whatever it is. So I wouldn't necessarily blame students for taking the decisions to going to such programs a little later, but what can help them, and I think how they need to start thinking about it, is really planning for their exit from college right in their sophomore year or something, so that it becomes easier for them.
Definitely.
100%. I
You
mean,
need an exit strategy from college. And one thing to mention about taking a gap year is that often students will think, yes, I'll take a gap year, then I don't have to think about this until next year. Well, no, because if the deadlines are in, say, September, October of the year in which you have just graduated in June, you need to really work over the summer to get those applications ready. You can't wait another year or you'll wind up taking gap year number 2.
yeah. And for that reason, I think it's probably better to take a gap year during university, like between your sophomore and junior years. You have that time to reflect, maybe do some travel, figure out who you are, I mean, you're at this very critical age where you're becoming the person that you're going to be for the next, hopefully 60, 70 years. And figuring out who you are, what you want, what's going to drive you every day to get up in the morning and go to work is so important. I feel like, especially in the States, there's such a pressure to go to college right after high school without really thinking about what career field you're going into. And you're just kind of I found most people are kind of just coasting and not getting the advice from parents or counselors that they need to be successful.
Well, the danger is that they could wind up coasting during that gap year, because I wind up asking people, well, exactly how are you going to discover your future career path while you are backpacking in Australia?
Mhm.
So those 2 things, I mean, the solution doesn't always fix the problem.
No. I mean, you have to be doing it intentionally. Like, maybe you're backing through Australia, but if you're, you also are taking time to have conversations with mentors, professors, people who are older, at least your parents at a minimum, to get some reflection.
And the way I see it is that college is a lot of fun. It's not like college is some horrible prison that you're condemned to. So I don't see staying in college as that much of a problem or as something that could prevent someone from exploring. Because there on a college campus, you have all kinds of things going on that you can try out. Once you're out of that environment and in the big world, people aren't paying much attention to you. It isn't set up for you to discover yourself.
Sure. Let me ask you a question, Marlena, as you were talking about gap years as well as like the kind of programs that require you to apply during your senior year. If you do take a gap year after that, after you graduate, can you still apply for those programs? That gap year kind of like count as a last year to apply for those programs or not?
Well, that's what I warned people about in the very beginning. Another reason to plan in advance is that there are programs that require that the student apply in their senior year of college. And those are largely the deferred admission programs that I know we'll talk about a little later. But it's very important to inform yourself well before the end of college.
Mm-hmm.
So, talking about these specialized business masters, such as finance, accounting, data science, etc., how do you think they differ from the traditional MBA programs?
The main difference is in scope. If your goal is to be the CEO of a company or to start your own company, you need the overview of every aspect of business that is covered in the MBA. Secondly, if you want to go into the fields of investment banking or consulting, there's a very clear recruitment path for those fields in the MBA, and it happens right in the beginning of the 2 years. So you have to be ready for that. But the master's degrees, they vary. And an important subset is the master's in management that does give a person an introductory overview to the kinds of things they probably haven't studied in college, but that also, to address Eric's point, provide really exciting opportunities for travel. So if you know that you want to do something that's very focused, finance, accounting, even sustainability, a master's degree might be the right path for you. And let's mention again that they are one-year programs, whereas an MBA is likely to be a 2-year program.
What was the program that they were talking about at Cornell, the tech? Does that fit within some of this that we're talking about here?
I called them this morning, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Because I wanted to make sure I was pronouncing it correctly. And I'm afraid I got a bit of a caricature of an engineer who answered the phone. I called NYU and they said, NYU Stern. I called Columbia Engineering. Hello. So I said, well, I'm calling to find out how to pronounce the exciting program that Dean Maglaris told us about at our conference 2 weeks ago, where you get a master's in an MBA, a regular MBA, plus a master's degree in engineering. And it's spelled MBA XMS. And he said, well, X is usually pronounced X, right? So he said, maybe you should call the business school. So I would recommend that for your point of contact in dual degrees or the exciting new pairing with engineering, call the business school because they really have the overview. And as the dean was telling us, at Columbia, they believe that every company today is a tech company. So it's imperative for people, even if they don't really think of themselves as tech people, to consider at least knowing what's going on in the engineering department. And Bara, I'm sure you remember the dean saying that his focus on climate and the
Yeah,
importance of not only inventing things that can help in the engineering department, but enlisting the business students who can bring those new products and services to market. That
right.
this is really a winning combination for the future. And I think you'll find quite a number of schools building programs that train people in both areas.
Yeah, I think they said that about the medical school too, right? That they were talking
Mm-hmm.
about how these hybrid programs are so important because we're not just a global world, but we're also a hybrid world, right? Where all of these different programs really you learn from each other. And I think in all of the courses, well, not the courses, but the workshops that these schools, Cornell and Columbia, offered, and I heard that the Yale program also, that they really emphasize that kind of diversity and eclecticism. So I found that to be super exciting. It made me want to go back to
Yeah, yeah,
school.
definitely. And I think that the big problems in the world need big vision to solve them. They need big solutions.
Yeah, one
Right.
thing that came to mind when we were discussing this is about the cohort size of these master's programs compared to traditional MBA programs. They're much smaller, so that fosters this kind of focus on, I would say, specialization or even the interdisciplinary focus that they would need. So, Marlena, what are some examples of universities that you recommend for these master's degrees?
Well, to get a sense of just how many degrees and the variety of degrees, you could start with NYU Stern. You could look at Duke Fuqua, and Duke has a very strong MIM degree, the Master's in Management, that provide people with real skills. And they also have a Master's in Management that takes place half in North Carolina and half in China, in Kanshun, which is near Shanghai. And a real advantage for young people concerned about their job search is that, as Fuqua says on its website, if you enroll in the Duke Kanshun program, you acquire 3 new networks. The MIM program at the Duke home campus, the Kanshun program in China, and your Rolodex will then include Duke University as a whole. And for that reason, I'm very much in favor of students looking at programs that are associated with prestigious, high-powered universities. Because, as Bara was saying, the kinds of problems that employers need to hire for and governments need to hire for are interdisciplinary, and the resources of a traditional university are irreplaceable. So, as we heard also at the Yale School of Management, when Bruce Delmonico, the dean there, was talking about electives for the MBA program, he doesn't care if people take all of their possible electives in Yale departments outside the School of Management. So that's another way to get that really broad sense of what a particular person needs to work on a particular problem.
So talking about like advantages, right? What would you say, Marlene, are some advantages of pursuing the Master in Management, also known as the MIM program in Europe, offer to early career professionals?
Well, as you know, Eric, the bachelor's degree in Europe is almost always a 3-year program. So it goes by in a flash, and it is typically specialized to a department. So the MIM is designed to provide people with a bachelor's degree, a European bachelor's degree, with the skills they need for the foundation of a business career. Because with a bachelor's degree, I think for pretty much any field in Europe these days, it's not what it used to be when it was a 4-year and often longer degree. People feel that they need a master's degree. They just don't know what. And as far as addressing the need to find a first job, well, people, they want to go into business, but they dread starting at the bottom. They don't really feel like working their way up. And as one student said to me, well, I don't know how in my first year out of university, I can get the kind of experience and responsibility that the top MBA programs are looking for. What can I do to start on a rung slightly higher up the ladder? And I think that the MIM is great at that. And students would be well advised to check the employment records of the MIM programs. I was doing that just in preparation for our talk today. And it's quite astonishing that the highly reputed MIM programs have placement records in, it's almost 100%, that 6 months after graduation, close to 100% of their graduates are either working or pursuing another degree.
Interesting.
There was this program when I was younger.
Yeah. So I'm not being facetious when I say that a great reason to get a MIM is if you need a first job and an interesting first job.
I can speak a little bit more in detail. In France, obviously, I've been living there for 13 years, and I think it's true in a lot of European countries where what is called the MIM today is the ancestor of this program is some of the more historical, prestigious programs in that country. So, for example, we call this Grande École. Grande École literally translates to great school, and you could kind of look at it as the Ivy League of France. You've got a handful of these in business, some in medicine. They're across different industries. But these Grande Écoles they've been around for at least 150 years, and they are considered the most prestigious schools, more than universities, right? These are like the elite schools. And as we've become more global, speaking about globalization, France has taken the decision to kind of harmonize them into this system called Master in Management, right? In terms of, at least with the business schools. So schools like HEC and ESSEC and ESCP and stuff, they all have these MIMs that are also locally known as Grande École. And because of this historical prestige and the reputation and the long line of alumni that have come from these programs, this reputation is really high, and that plays very much into the placement rate. So if you're coming from countries outside of France, particularly outside of Europe, this may not be familiar to you, and sometimes it's a little tricky trying to fit into this MIM system in France, because like you're coming from a 4-year degree in the States. Does that mean you do the full Master in Management, or do you come in midstream? There's different models that you can go through, but absolutely, we talk about the placement rate with these MIMs, you're very likely to get a good job. Within a couple
And that's also the reason why programs which didn't have a MIM are starting. For example, INSEAD has a MIM program which has been, I think, 3 years now. It's the third cohort is coming in, and so on. So it's a good time. And even the US didn't traditionally have like a MIM, but there are more and more programs that have a strong undergraduate business class, also looking at a MIM, like Ross and
You're absolutely right. Like INSEAD wants in on the MIM game, right? It is a market share that they don't want to miss out on. But to add more confusion to this French system, a Grande École is not just the program, it is also the system of schools. Like I said, it's kind of like the Ivy League. So it's a system. It is the school itself, and it is the program. So it gets a little bit confusing. But INSEAD is actually not a Grande École itself.
Right.
Even though INSEAD at the MBA level is widely known as one of the top European business schools, it is actually not a Grande École. It is formed more recently. It's actually a result of the Marshall Plan, which is a whole historical thing post-World War II, right? So, but HEC and ESSEC and many others are these Grande Écoles. It's interesting. People sometimes get confused. I think it's very important when you're considering the reputation of a school, or a program, I should say. It can vary from program to program. In other words, an MBA at a particular school may be here, but the MIM might be here, or the other way around. And so it's important to look into the detail of not just the ranking of the school, but of the programs.
It's rarely such a difference between the reputation of the school and the reputation of the MIM. I checked those statistics recently too, and the top 25 MIM degrees, almost all of them, at least the top 17, are associated with universities you would recognize too,
For
or
sure,
else
the
they are
majority
one of
are.
the grandes écoles.
Majority are, but there definitely are some exceptions. You definitely want to make sure you do your research.
You do, yes, absolutely, yes, and I'm a product of one of those grandes écoles, the
Ah,
Normal Supérieur. It trains the professors, France, but there was no talk about business there. Everyone intended to be a professor, but that's an example of a brilliant school with a very deep Rolodex, but no practical training. So I really don't know what's going on there these days, but I think it's pretty much the same everywhere. It's a generational shift that
also, yeah.
people younger and younger are declaring that the skills of business and the organizational efforts of business are the way that they would like to have an impact in the world. That's the way to make things happen, even for the more idealistic oriented among young people. If their goals are political change, they may decide that the skills that are taught in business schools are the way to change organizations at every level.
It sounds it sounds like it's an orientation, right? Like a filter or like a perspective to actually navigate through the world, right? Like I know that some of the schools that spoke to us when we were in New York talked about, the government officials going through their business schools, right? They were talking about these. It wasn't just that they were going to political science or government or an other kind of or law even, but they were actually moving through business school, and we've seen that with our I won't comment on it with some of our our presidents here who have gone through business programs, but it's been super interesting there, that idealism that you're talking about. Like it feels like it really brings a spark when you look at it through a business lens, because the way that it affects people, it's not in the turrets of academia, but it's actually out in the world of consumer.
Bara, like I think of like an MBA, for example, is more than just a degree. It's a mindset. And they're training leaders. It's not just about like being good at a specific task. You're more in that managerial, I call it the balcony level, where you kind of have an overview on a lot of things. You're not doing the nitty gritty, but you have this perspective, and that's the mindset. And as we're speaking about all these French schools, last week we had Polytechnique on, and Polytechnique is one of the grande école in engineering, and they're the best. There's another one called Centrale. They're also fantastic. They call it engineering, and they've pivoted to include this executive master. That's what they call it. It's kind of like an executive MBA. For India, Krithika, you had a comment that it was like, what was the name of the program they have in India that's very similar?
Oh, it's not in India though, but it's in the US, the Masters in Engineering Management.
Oh, I think you said it in India.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that at every stage of life, there is an appropriate retooling facility. And I think that that's what we're going to see more of in the future, that it's not as if people get educated for one specific thing and then that's it. They're a carpenter, just like their father, for the rest of their lives. But that at different stages.
Yeah. Well, look, as the world evolves, society evolves, needs change, technology changes, and schools respond to meet those needs. But also schools have the unique capacity to set those tones to create that change. So it's sort of circular, the way I see it. And like when you went to Normal Supérieur, France has all those abbreviations and funny little, which is also funny because if you think about it, is it normal or is it superior? But and there's a historical reason why it's called that, but it is one of the most respected institutions in France. And what the needs that they served when you were there, not very long ago, have changed.
Yeah. I also think that there is a role for people who and I would include myself and the Economasimia for people who are more reflective and more theoretical and more analytical and do not share the bias for action that is characteristic of business school. I think we need both kinds of people in the world.
Yeah, different leadership styles.
Mm-hmm.
People who
The
are
other
more...
thing. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
No, it was making me think of that one of those kind of leadership personality tests. In French, it's called arc-en-ciel, so it means like rainbow, and you have like the red, yellow, green, blue. Have you seen these tests? And it's like, are you more task oriented or more relationship oriented, like people oriented? And the different degree to which you're one or the other kind of put you in these categories. And it's a little bit artificial, but it does give you a lot of questions to think about and helps you reflect on what is your leadership style? How do you communicate? What motivates you? What are your fears? And if you're managing people, to understand the mindset of those other people on your team to help, lead them. You have to understand how they think. And so it's a good tool. It's not a science. It's more of an art than a science. But I fully agree with you, Marlena, that you need people who are on the more reflective side that are not just like, go, there's the type A's. It's red.
Yeah, the fail fast. It's just not me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
but
going
one
to
of
ask.
the advantages of I'm sorry. Go ahead, Krithika.
Yeah, thanks, Marlena. I was just going to add that, another thing that we see more often is the reason people don't want to get that work experience is that it necessarily doesn't help them accelerate in their career journey.
Yeah.
Because the traditional path as we knew it, saying that, you're going to work somewhere for 2 to 5 years and you're going to get the skill set and you're going to just go shoot up to the top level doesn't happen any longer. And they need more skills which are more, I would say, technology oriented, or for the younger crowd, for them to pick up and run, because we need different the jobs today are so different. It's just going to be a matter of time and you actually have prompt engineers working on available in every company.
Yeah, I agree that people need more intensive skills at an earlier stage in life to get to the position to which they aspire. And I agree that stepping out of education those activities may not give you the kinds of experience and accomplishments, most importantly, accomplishments that an MBA program is looking for. And another advantage of the Master in Management is you rapidly cycle through every aspect of business. So it's a chance for the students to decide, I'm more of this, or I want to do supply chain, or I want to do strategy, or I want to do accounting. Because otherwise, they wouldn't really get such a range of experience in a first job.
So we're talking about these skill sets, Marlena, and the retooling also. And we've had a couple of episodes talking about AI and about all these different pieces. So I think it's also we're at an interesting time as we're pulling this together. What are you noticing about the unique features of these programs that candidates like? And is that changing?
Yes. I think that candidates today and young people today are globally oriented, and most of them expect to have some international dimension to their careers. And the other thing is, let's face it, they like to travel. So the opportunities that many of the master's degrees offer to spend part of your time somewhere else, and some of them are even constructed that way, you must spend time somewhere else. This is really appealing to young people, and it makes them a person with a different sensibility that is valuable in a way that a chatbot is just never going to be. It lacks the
texture.
What we in German call texture is good, Spitzengefühl, the finger experience, and also the humility, the experience of being dropped somewhere where you really don't know what's going on. and everybody else does. And honestly, I'm all in favor of international experiences that are uncomfortable. If they're not, then it's not really a growth opportunity. If it's still comfortable, you might just as well have stayed home.
Your growth opportunities, growth mindset, these are all that kind of nimbleness and flexibility are useful not just in everyday life, but professionally. Whenever
employers are looking for it.
Yeah, I mean, we call it in the Bay Area, we call it a growth edge, right? That's what they like. Lean into your growth edge. So that's I think that is super important in today's world for sure.
And thinking about, candidates have options between a MIM and also a deferred MBA. So when do you think they should consider that?
Such an important question, because the MIM is designed basically to be an add-on to a bachelor's degree, an immediate extension and preparation for the world of work. The deferred option, well, let's look at it for a moment from the school's point of view, because after all, they're doing this for a reason too. They are securing talent. Now, of course, a person could decide they don't want to accept Northwestern's offer. The Kellogg School of Business is an example of a deferred program. Or a senior at NYU might qualify for NYU by NYU and be assured of a place at Stern, and then decide maybe not. Maybe it's time to leave the fold for a while. And I think that must happen in the typically 2 years between the time a college senior gets the offer of admission from a school and the time that they actually enroll for their MBA. They may change their minds, but it gives them a sense of security in taking risks with what they do with those 2 years, because they know that they have that ticket.
So, Marlena, how would you say pursuing a degree directly after college would impact one's career progression compared to going for, gaining that work experience first and then going for the MBA?
Well, I like to take the long view, being the theoretical type. So I asked not only what is the immediate positive result, and it's pretty positive. As I said, the success rates, placement are close to 100% in the MIM. But look, what are the roles and the salaries of people 5 years out, 10 years after the degree? And I think there you start to see a bit of the MBA degree pulling away in terms of career, position, role, salary. So at the beginning, I think it sounds pretty good to most college students to think, well, after a year in a MIM program, I could be making, say, $80,000 a year in a job that I kind of like. That's great. And I think that is both the promise and the fulfillment of the MIM degree. I think that the main question to ask yourself if you're a student is, do I want to be head of a department, say the Department of Health Analytics or the Department of Accounting, or do I want to be the CEO of the company? And that's how to decide whether you want the master's degree or the MBA in the long run.
It's a very hard question to ask yourself when you're 21, or whatever you may be. How do you know where your limits are? What is the ceiling to your aspirations? Because for some people it's like, yeah, dream big and say whatever you want. Other people are like, I don't want that kind of responsibility. Like, I'm very content at the departmental chair or director level.
Well, also, you're not blocked. I think that up until a few years ago, a person with a master's in management, MBA especially top MBA programs, would be thinking, well, why do you need another degree? But I think that's less and less the case.
Oh, I
So
see
the
loads
path
of people
to
with masters
an
that do it.
MBA is not blocked
No,
because you got a MIM, especially
definitely.
if you're clear on what you need that's different at this later stage of your life.
Sure. Like, yeah, be able to articulate that added value. Like, why are you going for this at this point in your career? It's just there's the financial investment. And that's like, some people would say, well, why would I do that twice? You know, it's a waste of money, maybe a waste of time. But let me tell you, I would say maybe like 40% or more of the people I see going for MBAs have already in Europe. Mostly I was seeing that in Europe. People have a master's also.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that some of the programs like it when their MIM students come back for an MBA, especially in the US, they are willing to even shave off 1 year. Example, Kellogg. So you don't have to do the traditional 2 years, but you could just jump into the second year of your MBA directly. That's one option. So I recommend deferred MBA to people. On a practical level, I say that do you already have a job? For example, someone says I got into consulting or something of the sort, and if it's a path where you need an MBA later on and you know that you're definitely going to go, that's one time. And then also for some people who are probably very confused as well, I say, like, what are you going to lose in trying? Because some of them are very confused about having multiple options ahead. And there's nothing to lose in such a program where they have the opportunity to go explore maybe one career path, maybe another career path. I had this one person do volunteering in Africa for 1 year during this time before they joined their deferred MBA as well. So I feel that the MIM also helped them in their career paths ahead.
Well, that's a perfect example, Krithika, of being free to do something you might not have chosen to do if you weren't assured of the deferred admission to an MBA program. But I think that you just, in some cases, you just do the math. A graduating college student could ask, well, do I have a $100,000 job lined up? But most of them, the answer is no. And I realize what you're saying, Eric. Yeah, but that's not only plus 100,000; it's minus the cost of the MIM plus the lost year of wages. But again, I would say carry that forward. Living mainly in Germany, as I do, I find that when it comes to calculating return on investment on these degrees, that Germans are very good at calculating the investment. They forget about the return. Yes, it's going to cost this, but take a look at how that plays out later.
How are the scholarship opportunities at MIM programs? Is it like all over the place, or I don't know if any of you know anything about that, but I'm curious how that plays out.
This is also a very important set of numbers to run. That my impression is there's more scholarship money available at the MBA. Mm-hmm. The MIM programs, frankly, tend to be moneymakers for the schools.
Exactly. They're the MBA programs are the school's prestige. They're their flagship program often, but yeah, they'll have more scholarships to draw people. The top talent, right? That's what they want in their flagship. Mm-hmm. And as you said, the younger the program, so the bachelor's even more so their cash cow, right? It's about volume. But there can be a range of scholarships that I've seen, but definitely more at the MBA.
Yeah, I was also going to say that the cost can also be a factor. MIM cost versus a deferred MBA cost later, in terms of it, where you're literally putting down about a $225,000 versus a $60,000 in the US for the MIM, right? So what other factors do you think, Marlena, are needed for someone to consider between A, a specialized master's degree, or B, a MIM, or C, and a deferred MBA option?
Well, I'd like to mention another advantage of doing a MIM, that it's a chance to recuperate the shortcomings, the possible shortcomings of your college experience. or if you didn't even register for the kinds of classes that will give you the quantitative background that you need later for an MBA, this is a chance to either polish up your record or develop that record.
A stepping stone to an MBA.
Yeah. I think that people can do that on their own. And I'm actually a fan of the standardized tests. I think that it's a wake-up call for people to sharpen their critical reasoning and to bolster those mathematical skills. And to my mind, of course, being the kind of person I am, they're the same. Whether you're testing it in words or numbers, it's logic. And I think that studying for the test and getting a really high score could compensate for your possible deficiencies in college without having to do a whole other year of school. But few are the people who are that motivated to sit down and do it.
It's all these tests are coachable. All these tests are, and you're learning skills and demonstrating that you can do it. It's we always say on the show, like, the way that you do the application, the way you do the test, that's how you do business school. That's how, so you can be smart about it. If you get, as you were saying, someone wrote me today saying that they were working on their test on their own to see how far they got. And I'm like, because they're really short financially and they didn't want to pay yet for test prep. And I said to him, if you do really well on the test, that's going to help you get scholarships. Like, if you pay up front, for an admissions consultant and the expertise that we all bring to the student, it winds up paying off exponentially when, in many cases. So
yes,
that's also there.
People don't realize, how many times have I been told, yes, I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say about how to get scholarships. And in the next paragraph says, oh, yes, but the schools I'm applying to, the GMAT is optional. Well, it's optional, but especially when it comes to scholarship money, a solid test score will show the school that you're one of the people they want the most. And those are the people to whom they offer money.
Absolutely. Do you have a piece of advice that you would share with early graduates?
Start sooner. Don't wait until you graduate. Start building that plan at the beginning of college and take advantage of the opportunities to demonstrate leadership that are available to you on your campus, so that you proceed strategically toward your goal of your career beyond your undergraduate degree.
That makes sense.
And check the requirements and check the outcomes. Check not only the requirements going in, but the outcomes going out.
Great. Well, this has been amazing. We're really just about finished, and it's so nice to spend this time with all of you. And we want to thank our audience and anyone who joined us online, and especially our featured guest, Marlena. It's so great to have you with us and give us your insights that you shared, should you want to get into an MiM program, and also MBA aspirants, helping them start in the right direction. So if you like today's episode, please give us a little thumbs up. And we're always open to your comments, suggestions, thoughts about different episode themes, schools you'd like us to talk to, test prep companies, testing companies. So be sure to subscribe to MBA Waves to stay on top of all of the latest trends and news in the world of MBAs, business, and education. And finally, don't forget to check us out next week at the same time, same place. And for full access of upcoming and past episodes, join us on MBAwaves.com. Everyone have a great week.
Thanks, Marlena. Thanks, guys. Nice to see you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.